Okay, my friends, fellow associates. It's going to be a bit different today. I feel I need to do something a bit more informal. And this has been brought about because a good friend of mine has been going through a difficult period in his life, having to come to terms with getting older, basically. He's had to go into hospital and have some stents put in his heart, and it's been a bit of a shock for him. And this is a very good man, one of the best, but it has been difficult for him to come to terms with what's happening and his situation. So I thought I'd focus on this, talk a bit about the stages of life, and of course the best place to start doing that, talking about that, is to look at Shakespeare. And I'm going to read you out Shakespeare's soliloquy, is that the right term? All the World's a Stage, which comes from As You Like It. And then we'll discuss these ideas, the ideas that it talks about, in a different context. And maybe that might be of help if you're going through, well, we're all going through life. We might be at different stages of it, but we're all going through life, and we need to understand what the signposts are and what the tasks are that belong properly to the different stages. So I'm going to go through that here, and you see what you think. So for those of you who don't know, As You Like It was a play by William Shakespeare. It's actually a comedy. He has a lot of very serious tragedies as well, but this isn't one of them. This is a comedy. But a comedy doesn't mean ha ha ha. We would think of a comedy. It's a kind of a lighter sort of play. It's not a horrible, brutal murder type play. So we'll start here. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 ages, right? So he's talking about men, but it's also the same for women, but different, obviously. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shiny morning face, creeping like snail, unwilling to school. For those of you who don't know, we used to have satchels when I was a boy. I don't think they do anymore. But a satchel was a leather bag with a strap that you could tie around your shoulders and carry it on your back. And you put all your exercise books and any other bits and pieces you needed to take to school with you in your satchel. And you took that to school with you. Maybe they don't do that now, but everyone gets driven to school these days, from what I can see, so they don't have to go dragging their feet, unwilling to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrows. We know all about what it's like to be wistful about the beautiful girl sit over there, and I love her so much, and she's so beautiful. That's the next stage. And then he goes on, then a soldier, full of strange oaths, and bearded like a pard. I don't know what a pard is. Anyway, jealous in honour, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking to bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. So this is a brave young man going out to fight the war. He's going to fight. He's even going to go charging towards the cannons. He's after merit. He wants to be lauded as a hero. He wants to prove himself. And that's that stage. And then the justice, in fair round belly, and good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise words, and modern instances, and so he plays his part. So that's the middle-aged man. He's now got a round belly. He's got some authority. He might be a justice of the peace. He might be a mayor. He might be a head of a corporation. He's a man of substance. And then, and sixth age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, whose spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved a world too wide, for his shank shrunk, and his high, big, manly voice turning again towards childish treble pipes and whistles in his sound. So that's the old man. This thin legs. We talked about the thin legs, didn't we, in the last lecture I did, and how you can get over that if you do yoga. And then last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history. Its second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. So he's losing his wits. He's become he's living in a home waiting to die, basically. He's lost his teeth, he's lost his sight, he's lost his wits, Alzheimer's. He's just there waiting to die. So this is Shakespeare's take on the stages of life, the stages of a man's life, as it would seem, the way it develops. But I want to take us on a slightly different path, and we'll look at this from the point of view of astrology. Now, I'm not talking about horoscopes here. I'm not talking about making predictions about the future. I'm merely talking about what I term astrosophy, the wisdom of the stars, and how, looking at the solar system and looking at the stars, we can see symbols and emblems of other things. And in this case, we're looking at the different spheres around our planet and comparing them with different stages in life. So you could say the first period, the mewling and puking baby, that's the period of the moon. And if you think about it, the moon is the Earth's baby. The Earth actually has to feed the moon. And if you read your Gurdjieff and Uspensky, Gurdjieff is very clear on this. He says that the Earth has a duty. It has a duty to feed and develop the moon. What that exactly means is difficult for us to understand. But he claimed that things like wars happen because the moon has to be fed. It's a horrible thought, but he was adamant that wars happen like it rains, it wars. And we're seeing this at the moment, this ludicrous war between Russia and Ukraine, started for no good reason other than pride, and bringing about the deaths of hundreds of thousands of young people, men, and many casualties among the civilian population of Ukraine. So hundreds of thousands of people have died already. And why? Well, Gurdjieff would say, because the moon needs to be fed. And that's what happens. I'm not going to go into that philosophy here. We might talk about that idea sometime later, but it's a sobering thought to think that we don't have control over something as crucial to us as war and peace. It's actually horrifying, but that's what he claims. So think about the moon as being the Earth's baby. And when you have a baby, you have to look after that baby. And you can think about not just the baby period, but going up to perhaps the age of 7. We call 7 the age of reason. The child at that time is totally dependent upon its parents, and it believes everything they say is gospel truth. You know, there are fairies, there is Santa Claus, you know. These things of childhood, the fairy tales in the book and the stories told are just as real as reality out there to the child. The child's imagination works overtime, and the child can play with a few bits and pieces and imagine that they're something else. So they talk to their teddy bear, they play with little soldiers maybe, or blocks, or anything. That play is all important. So that's the first period of time. And then you come to the second period, from 7 to 14, and you could call that the age of Mercury. Mercury, as you know, is a small planet. It goes around the Sun, and it goes around the Sun in 88 days, a cycle of Mercury. So it's the second fastest orbiting cycle after the Moon. Moon is only, as you know, 29 and a half days to do a full lunation. Then 88 days for Mercury. And that represents the schoolboy, and it represents the period of time between 7 and 14. And if you observe children at that time, yes, they're, oh, I don't want to go to school, I'm tired, you've probably been through that if you're a parent. But also children at that age, they like collecting things, especially boys, and they get very obsessed with things. I know I used to like, train spotting when I was a boy. There wasn't so much for us to do. But perhaps these days it's all Game Boys and collecting, I don't know, football cards or whatever it is. They collect things, and they are storing information, and more information, more, and trying to become knowledgeable about particular things, and they like to have hobbies. And that's very much what happens between 7 and 14. And 14 represents puberty, doesn't it? I know puberty can start a bit before that, but between the ages of 14 and 21 is, when sex really starts to play a part. And this is to do with Venus, the next cycle, and the next planet out from Mercury. Under the influence of Venus, people suddenly realize that, hey, actually there's a second sex here, and I'm attracted. The girl, before that, boys play with boys and girls play with girls. They don't want very much to do with each other. You've probably seen that in your own family, or when you were young. But come puberty, and suddenly it's all about, oh, I really fancy her. She's so pretty. Oh, I'm frightened. Can I ask her out? We'll go and have an ice cream together. It's like that, isn't it? And that is the time of courtship. And in the old days, it was the time of marriage between 14 and 21. It was very normal, especially for girls, to get married in their teens. They didn't wait until they were 30. They would get married probably at 16 or 17. Boys, maybe, but probably a little bit later, maybe 19, 20, or maybe 18. But it was very normal for people to get married. And that was the time of courtship and marriage and love. But then you move from Venus, and Shakespeare misses out this one. He's actually jumped straight to Mars, the soldier, and we'll come to him in a minute. But there is another stage in between that, which in astrological terms is the period of the sun. Now you have to understand that if you're in ancient times, you were talking about astronomy, you were thinking Earth-centered, and the sun goes round the Earth, not the Earth goes round the sun, if you understand what I'm saying. So the next stage was the period of the sun, which takes a year to go round. Venus is about 2/3 of that, the period of Venus. So that's the next one. And what is that about? That's between 21 and 28. And yes, you could be a soldier by then, but it's really, especially round about the early 20s, is the time you want to find yourself. And you should be trying to find yourself. Who am I? What am I here for? What's my identity? What's my purpose? What job am I going to do? What sort of life am I going to have? What really matters to me? Who am I? And who am I? That question is to do with the sun identity. That you are the sun of your own solar system, you could say, and you want to know who you are and what your talents are and how you can use them in the world and how you can make something of yourself. So that is that period between 21 and 28. 28 to 35, that equates with this idea of the soldier, but it's not just a soldier. I don't know if you've ever noticed this. If you work in a company, the people who are about 30 are the most ambitious, the most pushy, the most difficult to work under, because they are relentless in their drive to try to establish power and to establish control and to establish authority. And that's very much to do with Mars. The Mars, what Mars symbolizes in life is this sense of, no, yeah, I found out who I am, and now I want to get on. I'm going to climb the ladder. I've got to have my first house. I'm starting a family, and I'm now a junior manager, but I want to be a senior manager, driving forwards. And that's very much to do with that period of life. And people who have drive, that you often see this in adverts, want someone with drive. What they're saying, actually, we want someone who's got a lot of Mars there. They can push things on. They can be brutal. They can boss people around. They can set targets and work relentlessly towards them and make sure that others work as well. That's very much to do with Mars and that sense of that pushiness that you get. And it's, as I say, you find this particularly with people from 30 to 40, that sort of period in their life. They're very, very driven. And then you come to the next bit, when the round-bellied justice and the man of authority. You've actually already established yourself as someone of substance in the field that you have chosen. Now, in a company, this person would be a very senior manager maybe, or a director, maybe the owner of the company that he has built. But that's only within that sphere. We have other, you might be someone who's an artist. Yeah, so you've been very driven with your art, and you've had to live on nothing for a long time. Now you've been discovered, or you've made yourself be discovered, and now your art is valued. It might be music. Yeah, you are now a musician who's appreciated. You've reached the pinnacle, and there you are now. You're rock and roll royalty. You're Pink Floyd or Rolling Stones or I don't know, U2 or whatever. You are now at this level that your name on the billing is going to ensure a good audience turning up. And it can be the same with actors, of course. Certain actors' names, you put that on the billing. Well, we go and see him in such and such. But if they had an unknown person, they wouldn't get the same audience. And you know that. And it's the same in all spheres of life. Spheres that you and I know about, spheres we have no inkling about. Totally a different world from us, but the people in that world know. They know who are the movers and shakers in that world very well. And the top movers and shakers are these people who've made it, basically made it. And because they made it, they now have the fruits of all that. And the round belly goes with it. And the sense of authority, the sense of standing in the community. And it might be someone who's a judge or a very senior police officer, or something of this sort. Or it might just be, as I say, a person who's revered. He's now the person they want to interview on television to talk about books or talk about literature or talk about politics, whatever. He's now a man of substance. And then that one goes with Jupiter, which is the planet after Mars. As I said before, there should be another planet in between Mars and Jupiter. It's gone. But that's another subject. Within the planets we know, the next one from Mars is Jupiter, and that has an orbit of 12 years. Mars is only 2 years, 12 years for Jupiter. There should be another one of about 5 years, but that's gone. So Jupiter represents the number 12, and the number 12 is very much to do with authority and the law and justice and power, in the sense of being an upholder of tradition. And then the next one, the lean slippered pantaloon, whose legs have become too thin for his trousers, and he has to wear glasses because his eyesight's not so good anymore. What else did it say about him? He wears slippers. The lean slippered pantaloon. He's a bit of a figure of fun in this. He's the man who's past it, he's the old man, leave him alone. The younger one has taken his place as the authority. He's the old guy, give him a cup of cocoa, he's the good guy. Well, that's not really what you should be seeing with this, because this one is Saturn, and Saturn is not all about old age, it's also about wisdom and about knowledge from experience, and having come out from the period of your life when you're obsessed with things and obsessed with status symbols. For example, the man with the big belly, he's very conscious of status symbols. He has to have a big car, not because he needs one, to show his status. The guy who's Saturn has passed that. Now, they had this idea in India, and I think this is a very good idea in India, that your life, they take your life in 3 stages. And the first stage, you're a child, you're having to grow up, and you take orders. You're actually almost like a servant in the family, looking after your parents' needs, and yes, I'll go and do this and go and do that. Then the second stage was the householder. And the householder is the man of the house. And he has the authority of the man of the house, but he also has the responsibility. He's got to look after the family. He's got to look after the house. He has to have a career. He has to be having a means of making money to pay for everything. He's got to keep his wife, and he's got to keep his children. And he's also got to look after his old parents, who are no longer in employment. So they didn't have pensions in those days. It was on the family to look after the old folk who've done their job, bringing him up. But then the time comes when he hands over the reins to his son, and the son becomes the new householder. The old man retires, and in his retirement, that is when, in India, he would be practicing yoga, studying scriptures. He's preparing for the afterlife. He's now no longer engaged with the world, as it were. He's engaged with higher things, and he becomes an authority on those things. So he becomes a kind of guru in the family. He knows he had the experience of the past. He knows he's seen it all before. But he's also thinking philosophically, because he's now freed from all that tribulation of life. He's handed all that over to his son, who's taking care of that, taking care of business. He's now free, and he owns nothing. He strips himself of everything, the material. He reduces himself to the situation of just him with God. and that's what matters to him. So this is kind of what Shakespeare's missing in this particular instance, because when you cross this threshold, which in this way of thinking would be between 42 and 49, the seventh period. But of course we ought to lengthen these periods because they don't all chop in at 7-year intervals. Maybe they did in the past because lives were much shorter then, but we can probably think more in terms of decades rather than periods of 7 years. But this guy, he's now retired and he is studying philosophy. And then the next stage after that was the old people's home in Shakespeare. That's not really given in the planets, as it were. The period of Saturn would normally terminate. Yes, you're going to have a period of at the end of it when you're perhaps losing your wits, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just die of old age, fully cognizant, and people do, you know. I've had friends who have died who have been in their 80s and still as sharp as a knife, you know. So it doesn't automatically follow that you're going to have to become a second baby, having to wear nappies and puking again and you know, witless. Doesn't have to happen that way. Not if you've lived your life in a good way and prepared yourself and done sensible things. But anyway, it might happen. But that then is the precursor towards the eternity. You move out of this solar system. You're going to the great divide, and you're going to go with death. We have this marvelous Egyptian image of the weighing of the heart. That's why I put it up there. It's a reminder that you're going to be judged after you die. And in this weighing of the heart, there is a balance, and the soul is led in. You see the soul here. Coming here. It's actually a woman's soul in this painting, and being led by Horus to the balances, and the balances being weighed, the little jar in one side and a feather of truth in the other, and the little jar represents what's in your heart, your true essence, and your true essence is weighed against the feather of truth, and if it balances, then you pass the test, and if you pass the test, then that's recorded by Thoth, who's Hermes in the Greek texts. And Hermes is a kind of Christ-like figure in ancient Egypt, but more on that later. And he records it here in the Book of Life. And he records that, the judgment, and then if you passed, you get taken to the court of Osiris. And he's sitting here in his court, and he's in Orion. So if you pass the test, you go to Orion, and you go to the court of Osiris, he who sits on the throne. If you fail the test, then you get gobbled up by a monster. There. And the monster consumes the heart. What does that mean? Well, I think it means the other possibility of being reincarnated or recycled and having to come back here. But anyway, that's the Egyptian concept. But we have the same concept, don't we, in Christianity or in most religions, that after death you're going to be judged. So it makes sense for you to lead the good life, to lead the life according to God's commands, which are given in the Ten Commandments and in the extra 2 commandments of Jesus, love God and love your neighbour. And if you do that and follow that path through life, then when you die, and we're all going to die, you will not have nothing to fear with the judgment, that you will be welcomed with open arms. Come in, my dear friend, you've done well. Come and join my court. If you've lived a horrible life and you've been a criminal and you've done terrible things and you haven't repented of them, then you can expect to be gobbled up by the monster. And you might not be reincarnated. That might be the end of you. We don't really know, do we? So that's how I think we should be looking at this and thinking about how can I make the best use of my period on earth. And you see, we have a problem here that our culture today tries to present us with the desires for living a childish life without responsibility, and at the same time enjoying the wealth and power and influence that would come from having done your job, your work, and been successful. So we have the situation, I don't know if you ever look at the Daily Mail, I do sometimes, and always at the top you have this quickly moving pictures of these very glamorous looking women wearing usually almost nothing and showing off their wonderful beach body to everyone. Oh, here's so-and-so. Yeah, that's not what you should be thinking about. Maybe in your teens, yeah, that's the time for all that. Early 20s, you're trying to find a mate. You're trying to find a partner. You want to look good. Not necessarily flaunt yourself on the Daily Mail, but you want to look good. You want to attract someone that you can find a husband if you're a woman, or a wife if you're a man. You've got to, you have to do that. That's part of that period of life. But other periods of your life have other requirements. Part of that is taking responsibility, first of all for yourself, and then for your family and for other people. You've got to go through that. And then when you've done all that, you come to the end of your life, you've lived your life, you need to then turn to establish again what your relationship is with God, with the divine, with the Almighty, with the cosmos. Because you know you're going to die. We all are. I'm certainly going to, and you are too. And you're going to have to go through this, something like that judgment scene. So you need to prepare for it. And that's what the last period of your life during retirement should be all about. It's not just a time when you go fishing or playing golf or knitting or, yes, do those things, nothing wrong with that. But it should also be a time of reflection, a time when you take a look at your life, you look at yourself, try to understand the lessons that you've been put through. Because all lives are lessons. Things are given into your life. Your life is going to be an up and down journey. It is. For all of us. We all have difficult times, and we have good times. Good times, bad times. We have them. You have to navigate your way through life. And when you get to sort of my age, I'm in my 70s now, you can look back on your life and try to appreciate the pattern. Try to appreciate the different situations that you've been through and been in. Learn the lessons of them. Learn what you did right and what you did wrong, and make a contract with yourself that if you do come back here, you'll try better next time, not to make the same mistakes, and to build on the good things that you did in this life. Or maybe you will manage to get through, and you'll find your way onto the New Jerusalem. Who knows? But it's a time of reflection, and a time not just for enjoying your grandchildren, enjoying fishing and golf, as I said. It's also a time for reflection over what your life means. And it might be a good time to write something down to leave to your posterity, if you have posterity. Some notes. Doesn't have to be a long thing, but say, this is what I learnt. Not really for them, but for you. This is what I learnt. this is what I did wrong, this is what I did right, and learn from my mistakes and build on my good things I did. I think that's a very good thing to do. So that was what I wanted to say today, and if you're like me, getting a bit long in the tooth now, maybe that's time to think about that. But if you're younger, then go for it. Find yourself. Shakespeare left that out, finding yourself, the son. Find yourself. Find out what your purpose is. Reflect on it. Look at your dreams. Look at who you are. Try to understand what your talents are if you haven't already identified them, and prepare to build a life on those. And it will come to you. And if you're a woman, I'm just going to put this in because I think women are having a terrible time at the moment with all this woke nonsense, and particularly these LBGT trans stuff, that a man who has his balls cut off is a woman. It's not true. He's not. He's a gelding, isn't he? He's been castrated. He's a eunuch. That's what he is. He can't have children. He hasn't got a womb. He hasn't got ovaries. He can't have children. He's not a woman. So, but you must also reflect that as a woman, only you can have children. Men can't. Men are incapable of it. Women have that possibility, and the human race depends on enough women having children to carry it forwards. And so much feminism is aimed against that. It's trying to turn women into men. You could be just as strong and tough as he is. You can be a dominant force in your company. You can realize yourself. Don't bother with that family nonsense. Don't get married. Just press on with your career. That's madness. And if everyone follows that path, then we're not going to have another generation, are we? And we're going to be swamped with people who do still understand basics of human life. So I'll leave that with you, and I hope you found this of interest, and we'll take it from there. And the next lecture I'm going to do will be an open one, will be about Jerusalem, but that will come later. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again.